Hey peeps, I want to let you in on a little secret. The guys over at CLNS actually don't know everything about sports. It's true. We're close, of course, but we're always trying to learn more. And one of my go-to spots for content on all things sports is The Athletic. It's a subscription-based publisher of smarter sports coverage for the diehard fans. And now you can be just like us and subscribe, except you can subscribe for 40% off. Yeah, that's right, 40% off. Go to theathletic.com/thegarden and get started now. It's legitimately $3 a month, people.
Hey everybody, welcome on into the Garden Report podcast. It's Nick Gelso, who you're probably annoyed hearing bash Kyrie Irving. I'm not going to do that today.
You're not making many friends.
Road trip for the Celtics. No, man, I'm getting killed on Twitter. I've now joined your ranks of being destroyed on Twitter. But that voice you hear is a blast from the past. It's my co-host on my non-sports podcast, Beats and Eats. It's Ty Ray, who is a CLNS legend, man. It's your first time getting your voice out there this year. We're going to focus on some of the NBA, player, social media, player fan interactions that's been going on lately. But dude, it's just thrilling to have you on the show, and welcome.
It's weird, Nick. Thank you for having me, but it's weird not to have hosted a single post-game show this year. I turned the clock back 6 years. Right, 6 years ago, hosting the post-game show. And
that's crazy.
The old team hosting the post. We used to do these marathons. Remember these marathon post-game shows? And
I sure do. I remember the instant messages I would get on Skype blasting me for going another hour. What are you doing? It's 2 a.m.
It's so funny.
But we have callers.
Very nostalgic. Very, very nostalgic for those days and the old crew that used to do it. Now, having said that, the guys today are doing a fabulous job, so I don't want to make it sound like I don't think that. They're incredible. They do an amazing job, and their commitment to the show is incredible. It's just funny that I haven't done a show this year. Maybe I'll do one for the playoffs if they let me.
It'll be good. I might. Maybe you and I should do one together. But for those that don't know, that are listening to are fans of the Garden Report, we do at the Garden and here on the podcast version, the Celtics postgame show on CLNS is the longest running podcast. Not podcast. Like Celtics Up Live is the longest running Celtics podcast in history, but a CLNS owned podcast, Celtics postgame show. If you want to hear what it was like podcasting 10 years ago, we have not changed the technology at all. Listen to the postgame show. That's how it was to podcast back in 2009. Speaking of Ty, and I know we got to get into our topics here, but 10 years, man, it's our 10-year anniversary this month. CLNS Media.
10 years, and so much has happened, so much growth. Think about it, Nick. You started with an idea about doing a post-game show in the KG era.
Yeah, I mean, that's the truth.
And you were living in Pennsylvania, and now you're living in Boston, covering the Celtics at TD Garden. I want you to think about it. Let that set in.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of like, I do think about it quite a bit, actually. And the most times I probably think about it, Ty, is at the end of the night, on game night, we're going out to film, and we're going out to the parquet floor, and the Garden is completely empty. And I look around and say, who would have ever thunk I would see this place when I'm the only guy in it? One of maybe 10 guys, right?
It's a great feeling.
It's a great feeling. And I just, big thanks to everybody out there who's been supporting us so long. So 10 years ago this month, the site was actually called NorthStationSports.com. I released my first deplorable blog post. But the grammar and the spelling was horrendous, but the topic was great because I was bashing LeBron James. So
things
here we
haven't
are 10
changed
years later, and I'm still bashing LeBron James. So let's fast forward to the future, to the present time. But before we do, Ty, got to tell listeners about our primary sponsor, and that's BetOnline.ag, which is our preferred sportsbook on the internet. And because you're a listener to the Garden Report, you watch us all the time, we're going to give you a 50% cash bonus. Just go to clnsmedia.com/win. Use the promo code CLNS50. You deposit $500, they're giving you $250 back in cashback bonus. So I'm doing it. You should do it. And Ty is now a degenerate gambler. He's doing it too. So anyway, right back to the topics. Ty, Celtics coming off a great road trip. I think that's been discussed at length on all 17,000 Celtics podcasts on iTunes. So let's hone in on more of a generalized NBA topic, and we're going to make this a quick hit podcast like we always do with the audio versions. But I want to look at primarily what is the ongoing narrative about the fans, social media. I don't want to say versus the players, but maybe conflicting with the players, and that friction that is now beginning to surface, probably for the first time, and it's not comparable, but from the first time since the Malice at the Palace, we're seeing friction amongst the players and the fans. It's just not a good environment, and the fans are paying. It's just bad. I mean, all the way around. So let's hone in on that a little bit. I mean, we obviously have the Russell Westbrook altercation with the male and female fan who he actually lashed back out to, not physically but verbally. We also have the comments made by Adam Silver about players being depressed and feeling a little detached from the fan base. And then, of course, LeBron had to jump on that train, but so did Kyrie. So this narrative continues to grow, and I'm really interested as a veteran Emmy Award-winning sports journalist out there in the Pacific Northwest. Ty, how do you take to all this?
I got to be honest. This NBA season has been the least enjoyable for me as a fan in the history. That's saying a lot. And I lived through the 90s. And I lived through the 90s too.
You lived through the 90s,
which was a horrible decade for basketball. I think, even though Jordan was amazing and on a different
I think the
level.
late 90s to mid 2000s was the worst era. The Allen Iverson era.
I'm watching the Sixers and the Pacer game the other day, just because, of course, it affects the Celtics in the standings.
Right.
So I'm sitting there watching it, and just as a casual fan, and of course we have to do our token shot of Kendall Jenner as she's gazing at her loved one, Ben Simmons, and I'm like, seriously, I'm done. I'm done. And call me the old guy, I just don't care. And Dirk Nowitzki the other day, I thought, hit it right on the head when he said that players today, he feels, care more about their Instagram followers, their Twitter followers, their social media following, and then winning and losing. And that's where I'm at. And maybe I am sounding like the old guy. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have a different feeling there, though those things annoy me, and I think Dirk is correct. The compelling piece, or the marketable piece about the NBA, and the reason I think it could go 12 months out of the year, is that drama that's getting on yours and my nerves. It's getting on my nerves too, but it's what sells the NBA. And what distributes that drama? Well, the TV does, obviously. The radio does a bit, but really it's YouTube and social media. So you're going to see that. I think what really agitates me is, and I won't mention names, but the beat reporters and I'm not saying they're Celtics beat reporters, just the NBA beat is so obsessed with Twitter. I think they're worse than the players. They're more concerned with asking a cute question that might get some airtime on TV or a ton of retweets than they are asking a question that is applicable to a story or an investigative report.
I think that's really true. Yeah. I think that's so true.
Me badly.
I think that's true. And I also don't appreciate what I have found on Twitter in particular, and I'm just as bad. I troll Trump all the time, so I'm just as guilty. I troll Trump because he's a troller. But anyway,
you are the king of trolls.
What I hate,
you're a passive-aggressive troller.
What I hate, though, is that you cannot.
And you didn't run to my defense, Ty. I got killed.
I didn't. You had one guy who just wouldn't let up. Get a life, dude. I'm just going to say this.
It was more than one guy.
Here's the deal, people. Get a life.
Well, here's the thing, Ty, and I want to go back to your point, but that gentleman, I'm not even going to shout out his Twitter handle. And I first of all, let me go out with this. I love the engagement on social media, even if it's negative. I could take criticism. But this guy, I don't know if he works for Sarah Huckabee Sanders or what, because we were actually, he's lashing out at me for I'm saying about the team and Kyrie that on post-game answers. So he's saying this stuff to me, saying it never happened. I'm making it up. Well, I don't even manage the Celtics CLNS account, but that account, the social media manager, is actually tweeting him the video evidence, and he's saying it's fake news.
Ridiculous. And what I don't understand, Nick, is why back in the day when I would debate sports with people, it was fun. Yeah.
Oh no. Well, nothing's fun to debate anymore. Tom.
Now it's like what? Because I have a difference of opinion with you.
Well,
I don't understand that. Now, I think this has to do with the culture today, Nick, overall.
I do too. That's where I'm going. I do too.
This isn't just a sports thing. This is overall culture.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. I mean, everybody has adopted this. I'm not bringing politics into a sports podcast,
but it has to do a lot with it. Yeah,
they've adopted. I mean, I'm going to probably get killed for saying this too, but in a very contradictory way, LeBron most mimics Donald Trump. He controls the media narrative.
Yes,
he uses social media to do it. He is a complete narcissist. I obviously like LeBron more than I like Trump. I shouldn't even say this on a podcast, but they're very close, and I think that would be the ultimate insult to LeBron. But again, it shows that the media environment in 2019 has trickled down from the top of the ladder. So the political environment, I think, is oozing into sports. I really do.
And Jaylen Brown, of course, called losing toxic. I think Twitter is getting toxic. I think social media is getting toxic with all the conversations. And it used to be fun, Nick. That's why I said this has been the least favorite season. It's like and as you know, a huge Celtics fan just like you, Nick. Celtics lose a game. Oh my God, the sky is falling.
Right,
or if they win a game, oh my God, they're the greatest. It's like, it's just not fun anymore. People don't let things play out. And maybe I'm just old school because I come from the day when you actually read the newspaper and stories it took time, right? Had a chance to marinate. Nothing was knee-jerk. And everything is just so immediate now. It's so frustrating.
It is a tough environment to cover the team in, even. I mean, because that's where you see a lot of that, the stuff you're referencing, where, Twitter makes it hard to manage your own reporting staff because they're very consumed with Twitter. And I mean, it is, again, contradictory because it's a big part of their job. It's also working with CLNS or Celtics blog. We want, our contributors to continue to grow their personal profiles and brands. So you want to encourage them to tweet, but at the same time, tweeting doesn't take precedence over coverage. And not to say our guys do that, but we've all done it. I've done it too. Our guys have done it. I've done it myself, where I've, spent more time tweeting out a quote than I have maybe grabbing a pregame video of what fans really want to see, which is, Kyrie Irving and Jason Tatum playing one-on-one, right? So instead I'm in the locker room, I'm putting the blame on me, but I'm in the locker room, tweeting out a cute quote from Brad Stevens to get some retweets. I should be out on the court filming. So it's infiltrated the media as well. Social media, it's the demise of everything. So about the Russell Westbrook situation. So first things first is I'm going to get this out of the way pretty quick. I'm not a big fan of the Russell Westbrook brand. I never liked covering games because he makes you wait forever to say pretty much nothing. Basically, what you're getting out of his post-game presser is what outfit he's wearing that night. But I have to say, in his defense, I've never seen Russell Westbrook react to any situation the way he did at that game. And reading what that couple were saying, including the wife, I don't know that. I mean, I'm sure that the next day Russell Westbrook said, "I wish I handled that differently," but I don't know that I could have handled it differently if I were him.
I don't know either. Although you may recall last year in the playoffs, at the end of the playoff series in Utah, Russell went after a fan, and I don't think that,
he did.
And I don't know if that fan actually did anything wrong. So I
don't know. And here I'm saying it's not in his character. I guess what I'm referencing, Ty, is the things he was saying. I mean, he is. I would never even begin to speculate that he would be abusive towards a woman because he told her to go F herself too, or you can have to tell her too. I mean,
right.
And though that was inappropriate, and people need to control themselves, especially in scenarios where they are as influential as a guy named like Russell Westbrook. At the same time, like I said, I don't know that I could do anything differently. If a woman said to me what she said to him, I would be able to control me physically. I would never ever go after anyone, let alone a female. But I don't know that I wouldn't have been able to stop myself from lashing out at her, because it's so revolting and jarring at that moment. And you could see it in Wes's eyes. He's no longer in the arena at that moment.
Also, if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to mention the guy's name who was in the altercation with Westbrook.
Right.
Didn't he have on his Twitter account, go back to where you came from?
Yeah, I mean, it was
and
just
all
really
sorts of nasty racial stuff, and of course,
kind of a product of the environment that we're in today.
One of the "Make America Great Again" folks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say that, but it seems his Twitter seems to definitely go down that route. That's definitely, I think, his political persuasion. But it is a product of the times, and my lifetime. I mean, I'm not that old, but I'm old enough to say that you would think 20 years ago or 30 years ago it would have been worse. I mean, I grew up in a town with one African American. I never heard or saw things like I'm hearing and seeing today. And I want to keep it to basketball, but that also goes for just about everything. And it's oozing into basketball. And frankly, the one party that is at full blame for this situation is the owners of the security at the arena. Those fans, I mean, you're handing people yellow tickets saying you've been flagged. Get them the hell out.
Yeah.
They don't deserve to be there. I mean, they could keep their ticket money if I'm the Jazz or if I'm the Celtics or if I'm the Warriors or the Thunder. You know, keep your ticket money because you don't belong. I don't know how to say this stuff. It's just such a touchy subject. You don't have the right to consume that great entertainment if you're going to disrespect
the entertainers,
the stars, the entertainers, and not even in. It's one thing to heckle. Like heckling's always been part of the game, and you can heckle, but it crosses a line when it becomes racial or violent.
Do you remember Robin Fick?
No.
He was the heckler that was behind.
Oh yes,
yeah.
Yes,
remember?
I do.
But it was all in great fun.
It was fun. I mean, he was Detroit, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, no, DC. He was in DC.
DC. Okay, yeah. I mean, he had a part on Sports Center every night where they go to his heckling. But again, that was good fun. Heckling, that's part of the game, man. If you guys can't handle that as players, then you know what? You don't belong making the money you're making. However, Bill Russell had to go through what he had to go through in order for the players today not to have to go through what Russell Westbrook had to endure by a fan in that game. Now, again, I'm not saying Russell handled his portion of it correctly. I think he could have been, a bit more responsible or maybe ignored them or reported them to security or whatever. But to me, it all starts with the fan, which means they are the responsibility of the arena, and the arena did a very poor job of policing that situation.
That they've got to have a zero tolerance policy. That's just what it amounts to.
People are actually like I'm seeing this go around now. Like, oh, the NBA needs to institute walls like the NHL. Well, let me tell you, that's the end of the sport. If the basketball, and I think I'd love your. I always say this and then I talk over you. I'd love your opinion on this and then I'll talk over you. But like people being close to the players and the action adds to the entertainment value of the sport, the intimacy of the sport, meaning you could see the players' faces, you could see to a certain extent their body, you could see their body language completely, and they're also so close to the spectator that it's all part of the entertainment. So if the NBA has to start going a route where they're separating the fans from the players, a la hockey, for obvious reasons, hockey has to do it, then you know what? They're really going to hurt that product terribly. And it's a real shame and an embarrassment to both the players, the fans, and the league if the fans who are paying the bills cannot coexist within a 100-foot radius of the players who are entertaining them.
Oh, you have to, right? There's a certain intimacy, unlike any other sport, I think, with basketball.
I agree.
And you have to maintain. You have to maintain that. Hockey's different; it's moving up and down the ice. Basketball's fast too,
and there's a danger factor.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys with the sticks, the pucks, absolutely, completely.
And in hockey, the players are wearing masks. There's that sports detachment in hockey that you get with football, to a certain extent, baseball. Whereas basketball, you see. I mean, KG's a living proof. I mean, you would have to, put you would be editing out every single lip. You couldn't even lip sync with KG because if you were at the game, you'd hear him cursing, right? So that's part of the great aspects of basketball. And like you just said, I think that you can't take it away.
Yeah, you you can't take away that intimacy. And like you said as well, the great thing about the sport is that, baseball, you've got guys in hats and helmets, and hockey, you've got helmets on, and football, you've got helmets on. Here you really get to see the players up close, see what they look like. So there's a connection there, and there's an interaction there. But this is not uncommon. We've had this happen in the past, but I don't think these altercations, they're becoming too frequent, in my opinion. I mean, I think back, man, do you remember was it 81 when Max went in the
went in the
Philadelphia?
Keep that on the Sixers, because you remember in probably 91, 10 years later, Barkley, I mean, he didn't just spit on a fan. I mean, this was like a Charles Barkley-sized Luger that went into the stands. He spit on a fan. But like, the thing is, David Stern had zero tolerance, man. He got it. I know they were talking about not allowing him back then to be in the MVP discussion for doing that. But before we throw it back to you, those were not racially, as far as we know, they were not racially motivated altercations. These have been.
Marcus Smart dealt with that in college. Remember at Oklahoma State, where he went after a fan. Yep. But I think that you are onto something here. I think these are more racially motivated, and people are starting to get the green light because of the culture we live in. And like I said, don't want to make it a political podcast, but let's just be honest. We're seeing more of it.
It's a trickle down. I think it has a trickle down effect, and again, it's a shame because the NBA, David Stern had done such a good job of getting the NBA through the ABA and through the bad stuff that went on in the early 80s. But then on top of that, transitioning it past the Jordan era and getting through the Iverson era, where they were starting to have another imaging issue. And now here we are. And I got to say, Adam Silver has not, as much as I respect him, I've met him, he's brilliant. He's not been real proactive with this at all. Kind of been a little muted on it, other than those comments at Sloan, which I think fueled the players.
Yeah, I just think that he tries to walk. He's a businessman, right? He's trying to walk a tightrope, so he's not.
But in this situation, I think you got to be black or white tie, don't you?
I do. I absolutely do. That's why I think a no tolerance policy of games is warranted. I don't know how that would fly, but I don't know about you. I don't want to sit by anybody who's dropping the N-word or making. I don't want to deal with that.
I don't want to deal with that, dude. I was at. So I went to the Houston game as a fan. I had somebody in from out of town, and that was the Boo Bird game, where the fans were just booing the hell out of the Celtics for poor effort. There were a lot of things being shouted onto the court, and I know Boston, in my opinion, it's a false reputation. I think we've passed that, but Boston has had issues at Red Sox games with some rowdy fans. But I could tell you at the Garden that day, not once. I mean, I was in the midst of it all. I mean, and that was when I tell you, Ty, I mean, I've covered a lot of games. I've been to a lot of games. I've watched a lot on TV. Never seen a fan base so upset. There were Isaiah Thomas chants starting to break out. Anyway, back to the point is, as bad as it got in that locker room as a reaction to how bad they were playing on the court, there was never anything in my area, at least, said. All the games I've been to at the Garden, I've never seen it. And it's just a shame. And hopefully the NBA will come up with some sort of a zero tolerance. The one thing about the NBA that's always been so admirable has been David Stern. You know, I'm a big fan, and I know the fans hate him, but David Stern was instant to react to situations. So the narrative immediately changed.
He nipped it in the bud.
Yeah, and this is day 3. I got, ESPN on right now, and they're still talking about Russell Westbrook. Silver should be out there making some sort of a comment and a policy change of sorts, or a threat of a policy change. Either way, while all this stuff was going out in Utah, the Celtics were out west too. They were really tearing up the road on the West Coast road swing. And Ty, I know we got to cut here early. It's a quick hit podcast, but I think we would not be doing our fans a favor if we didn't talk any of West Coast swing. What were your impressions? Do you think they're coming back? They're definitely coming back in a better place, but are they cured? What antidepressant did the training staff put Kyrie Irving on? Like, what's going on?
Oh, it's so funny. All I was thinking is Godfather 3 when I was watching the Celtics West Coast road trip.
Godfather of all.
Yeah, which is, Pacino says, just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in.
They pull me back in. A lot of fans were saying that.
I'm not convinced. The defense in the Laker game was atrocious. And I know they won by 13, but I'm like, are you frigging kidding me? You're playing the Lakers with their G League players and LeBron James, who's completely detached from the whole thing, and he still had a triple-double. He had some guy named Jonathan Williams with a double-double. And
some guy.
And Mitch Wagner, or whatever the guy's name had a career high. And I thought the Celtics defense was now maybe it's just because they played with them. I don't know. Maybe they didn't take the game
now the defense through the entire since February 1st, even though statistically I think they still rank among the highest defenders, the defense has been really bad. I mean, I've really made an effort to watch players off the ball playing defense, and there's just zero communication. There's zero readiness. They're not playing intense defense, and it's always been a hallmark of Stevens' team. So, I got that at the Lakers game too, and then a night or two later, they gave up 140 points to the Clippers, where bad defense, but also a product of a high-scoring NBA today. But they lost by 20 and gave up 140 points, which furthers your.
Let's let this sink in a bit. That was the most points they had allowed since 1994.
I thought longer. I thought it was the 50s.
No, since
I could be wrong.
Since 1994. So
That was the year where Don Nelson's teams were trying to score 200 a game. Have you seen Nelly lately? By the way, he looks like he should be on Sons of Anarchy. Anyway, go ahead. What drugs is he on?
I think it was a great road trip. I do think that things are better than they were. But do I think they're great? No. But I didn't think they were as bad as everybody was making them out to be either. I lived through. It's funny. John Duke and I talk about this on Twitter.
What a great guy!
We lived through 2010 and how maddening that season. You did too. 2010, when that team started out, what were they, like 20-2, and then finished the season 28-28, and they'd win a couple games, lose a couple games, win a couple games, lose, and then
very frustrating season to cover.
And then out of the blue,
they go on a run.
They kicked everybody's ass in the playoffs until Game 7 against the Lakers. We don't need to go there, but
I gotta I've used that analogy too on Twitter. I was using it earlier in the season when they were 10-10. I've since retracted it, mainly because having covered that team and done every post-game show and watched them intensely just as much as you did, there's a couple really key aspects that the Celtics are missing in the 2019 rendition of their team, and that would be 3 Hall of Famers, a point guard that I hate, but hate is a bad word, that I really don't like, but however, there's no disputing the fact that Rajon Rondo showed up for huge games. You knew he was going to, and you knew no matter if he was hating on Ray or loving him, he was going to get him involved and get everybody involved. And they're also missing, this one's going to annoy the hell out of you, but let me finish my thought on it before you run to judgment. But they're missing a guy named Doc Rivers, who, wait a minute, before I go to Doc, they're also missing championship experience. I mean, besides Aaron Baines and Kyrie, no one has ever played in the championship series where that team had been through the battles and won a title. And then there's Doc. Like I think I tweeted out last night, because of course the narrative here in Boston has been, talk radio narrative has been, who would you prefer at this point in the season, Doc Rivers or Brad Stevens? I think for that 2010 team, you needed Doc Rivers. He knew how to manage those personalities. I think throughout this season, had Doc been the Celtics head coach, I don't think the personality issues, the locker room issues that had existed publicly this year would have been publicly with Doc here. So we would have found out about it from Jackie Mack in July. Now, that said, I wouldn't enter the playoffs with Doc Rivers as my coach. I want Brad Stevens. So the 2010 analogy, I think it's overdone a bit, and I was with it. Just because that 2010 team, they had fought the war together, man.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you. With my point being, I think with the 2010 team is that sometimes the regular season is not a harbinger of things to come. Yeah, it's not an indication of things to come in the playoffs necessarily.
and as I'm saying that, I mean, I'm also blowing over. That was a Doc Rivers-led team in 2010, and if we remember, and I believe it was against the Memphis Grizzlies, Kevin Garnett had a complete meltdown in the tunnel. They got booed off the court, and he screamed at the fans, "If you don't like it, don't come."
Yeah.
So there were issues with that team too. I mean, it does go to say that the old cliche, winning solves all problems. But for you to step back to what we had started the conversation with before we wrap here. So my scenario with this West Coast trip is, I don't care if they came back 0-4, as long as they come back smiling. I mean, if it's fake, it's not fake. If it's real, I don't know. But the attitude shift is noticeable. Whatever Kyrie is, whatever meditation he's doing right now to get him in the zone, keep doing it, because this team, it's documented now. Rozier said it. Other players have said it off the record. This team does not play well when Kyrie Irving is not in a good mood. So that's one thing I come back with saying, I'm encouraged about. The other thing has to be Gordon Hayward. We've seen glimmers of this throughout the season in small samples, but not in, the consecutive games that it was out West. And also, even in those games, I think he scored 30 earlier in the season, he never looked as confident as he did for 1 minute with the ball, versus, let's say, the Warriors.
No, he wanted it too. You could tell. Give it to me. Yep.
Give it to me. That's probably the most impressive part. It also really drove home how shorthanded this team actually is without a healthy Gordon Hayward, because they play like such a different team when Gordon needs to be guarded. So,
well, he's a 20-point scorer who can distribute the basketball
and play D,
yeah,
and play defense. So, I listen. You go out west and you have a good road trip like he did. The scouting report is now out, and teams are going to have to start game planning for him again now. But that's great, because if they have to cover Gordon, that means somebody else is open, and he knows how to find open players. And part of the problem has been Gordon Hayward has played more like Evan Turner than Gordon Hayward. Therefore, you could really, really high priced Turner. So you couldn't really use him as a decoy, let's say, or as someone to spread the court. So I think they're coming back with more positives. The Clippers game didn't really bother me all that much. I saw it as a trap game at the end of the trip. I knew they'd lose it. I didn't think they'd get killed, but I knew they'd lose it. And I think when it comes to, we're recording this on Wednesday, when it comes to Thursday against the Kings, I think there's going to be a Boston Garden that really wants to see a team with a good vibe, as they're putting it,
enjoying themselves.
That's who's coming back.
Well, you can also tell when a team is enjoying itself on the court too. And so to play with, that was always my big problem when I would watch LeBron and those Cleveland teams. They just never had any fun, even though they won. Yep. They just never had any fun.
Were they LeBron to blame, or was it Kyrie to blame?
Yeah, good question. Very, very good question. But regardless, let's get a little perspective here. Even though this has been a disappointing season, supposedly, this is still a 50-win team that is dangerous. And the key thing is be healthy, right? If they could... Not to mention yes, dangerous, get healthy, 50-win team, but they're also only a game and a half back from hopping all the way to the third seed. And I really want them to have first. I think if they get through the first round, it's all bets are off. They could go to the finals. But because of where they are in the seeding, they're going to play somebody strong in that first round. I'd like to see home court advantage. Yeah, and then you get past
and we got
that.
Games coming. Celtics have games coming up this month and in April against Philadelphia and Indiana, so you can make up some real. So to put into perspective what you just said, during February, which was the worst month I remember covering the team, probably maybe since 2015, when they blew it up, and now we're talking about a 50-win team that may be the third seed, that is by far may not be the best team in the East. Like Milwaukee may be a better team. They're playing better. They have a better record. It indicates the same thing with Toronto. But I don't think there's any team more dangerous with all the weapons that they have than the Celtics if they're in a good space.
No question about that. Certainly the deepest team in the playoffs. And you can bet the Raptors or the Bucks don't want to have to face them. Certainly not the 76ers, who can't beat them.
They can't beat them. I mean, I really want to see the Sixers, not just from the standpoint of I would cover the road games and be able to go home for a week or two, but also I love even though it always seems to be one-sided towards the Celtics, I love the competition in those games. I love the references to the old rivalry.
Yeah.
I love, as obnoxious as they are, I love covering games at the Spectrum, at the...
What's it? Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo. Did I just almost call? We always do this. I love covering games at Wells Fargo because the fans are obnoxious. Now, they're not racists, but they are. I mean,
they are obnoxious.
You're sitting in an arena with 18,000 hecklers, and they know their hoops. Philadelphia fans know their hoops. And so, yeah, man, I think it's important to have first home court in that first round. And I'm just glad to see that the team that's coming back is a little looser. I don't know if it's manufactured by the team, by PR, because they did go on that photo shoot release the day of the road trip where everybody had this plastic smile on their face. I don't know if you noticed that. So I don't know what is motivating this new chemistry or whatever you want to call it, camaraderie, whatever it is, man. As long as Kyrie stays happy, the Celtics are a very, 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 very formidable team, and I still think they're first to come out of the East if Kyrie can stay happy and healthy.
Yeah, keep the faith, man. Keep the faith. I agree.
Keep the faith. So on that note, Ty, thanks so much for joining me and hopping on this podcast today. And so the listeners know you can find us on iTunes, the CLNS Media mobile app, clnsmedia.com. Also, we'll simulcast this one over to Celtics blog. Ty, I'm going to have to edit out your curses. Jeez, man. and you can always, of course, catch us at the Garden where you get the video version of this show. So I'm at CLNS_Nick. He's at Coog88 on Twitter. Thanks to our sponsor, betonline.ag. Use promo code CLNS50. And, man, we'll see you tomorrow night post-game at TD Garden as they're going to tip off against the Kings. And we'll be there to cover it.